Okay, let's dive right into this explainer and unpack a massive 11,000-year historical epic. We're looking at a narrative that stretches all the way from the earliest cave dwellers to modern-day space exploration. To really grasp a civilization that has endured for this long, we have to look at its entire, sweeping arc. So you gotta wonder, how exactly does a civilization survive 11,000 years of triumphs, invasions, and rebirths? Because this isn't just the story of a static, unchanging nation. It's the story of a phoenix constantly rising from its own ashes, surviving cycles of immense wealth, devastating destruction, and really powerful resurgences. To make sense of this epic journey, we're going to break it down into 5 phases: the dawn of a civilization, empires and golden ages, invasions and resistance, the struggle for freedom, and finally, the rise of modern India.
Kicking things off with Phase 1, Dawn of a Civilization. We're going from cave dwellers to some of the world's very first engineers.
The sheer speed of advancement in early Indian society is just wild. I mean, think about it. Way back around 9000 BC in a place called Mehrgarh, folks weren't just farming wheat and barley, they were actually doing dentistry. Yeah, using tiny stone drills on human teeth. Fast forward to 3500 BC and boom, you have the Indus Valley with these perfectly planned grid cities and advanced drainage systems, which eventually transitions into the deeply philosophical Vedic period around 1500 BC.
To really put the Indus Valley civilization into perspective, it covered an astonishing 1.5 million square kilometers. While a lot of the world was still scattered in small, disconnected tribes, these guys were running massive, standardized metropolises with vast trade networks stretching all the way to modern-day Iraq. It's just incredible. But what actually took down this ancient utopia? Well, plot twist. It wasn't invading armies or massive wars. It was Mother Nature. The rivers shifted, the climate suddenly changed, and millions of people were forced to just pack up and abandon these grand cities, migrating east toward the Ganges.
Moving right along to Phase 2, Empires and Golden Ages. This is the rise of thought, science, and a united geography.
After those early cities faded, we see this really fascinating contrast in leadership pop up. On one hand, you've got Alexander the Great. His world-conquering army is exhausted, mutinying and retreating at the Beas River. But right in the vacuum of that fractured geography, this brilliant visionary scholar named Chanakya steps in. He mentors a young Chandragupta to build the fiercely unified Mauryan Empire.
And this unified power only grows under Chandragupta's grandson, Emperor Ashoka. But here's where it gets really interesting. After the Kalinga War, which was an absolutely brutal conflict with over 100,000 casualties, Ashoka goes through a massive, deeply personal transformation. He literally throws his sword down on the bloody battlefield and completely pivots this giant empire from a path of military conquest to championing nonviolence and spreading peace across Asia.
Then we hit the Gupta period, widely known as India's Golden Age. And honestly, the sheer volume of global advancements here is mind-boggling. You got Aryabhata giving us the concept of zero and figuring out the Earth is round. Then there are metallurgical absolute marvels like Delhi's Iron Pillar, which somehow hasn't rusted in 1600 years. Plus, they established Nalanda University, which essentially became the learning capital of the world.
Which brings us to Phase 3, Invasions, Betrayals, and Resistance, a long cycle of destruction and unyielding defiance. Now remember Nalanda University we just mentioned? Picture this. 10,000 scholars from all across Asia living together, collaborating, studying everything from astronomy to medicine in one place. It was, for all intents and purposes, the brain of the ancient world. But that incredible hub of knowledge suffered a devastating blow during Bakhtiyar Khilji's campaign in the 12th century. The Great Library of Nalanda held so many thousands of manuscripts that it reportedly burned for 3 continuous months. Just let that sink in. Millennia of scientific and spiritual research gone in a single cloud of smoke. And as we look at this era, a really tragic pattern starts to emerge. Many of these historic downfalls weren't caused by a lack of bravery on the battlefield, but by inside jobs, internal betrayals. You see it with Jaichand betraying Prithviraj Chauhan at Tarain, the internal fractures that destroyed the super-wealthy Vijayanagara Empire, and even the capture of the Maratha leader Sambhaji, which happened because of a devastating insider tip. But here's the flip side. For every betrayal, there was an incredibly fierce, unyielding resistance. Look at Maharana Pratap. He gave up his royal comforts to literally eat bread made of grass in the jungle just so he could wage a guerrilla war alongside local tribes. Or Shivaji Maharaj. capturing his first fort at just 16 years old. He faced down towering adversaries like Afzal Khan and even built a revolutionary naval fleet from scratch to protect his people.
It really highlights a civilization built on an unyielding spirit. Just listen to the final, defiant words of Shivaji's son, Sambhaji, to the Mughal Emperor Aurangzeb. Even while facing horrific physical torture, he flat out refused to surrender his faith or his pride. It's a powerful testament to that resilience.
All right, moving into Phase 4, the struggle for freedom, from the East India Company all the way to a nationwide revolution.
And this brings up a mind-bending question, doesn't it? How exactly did a civilization so famously wealthy that it was known as the Golden Bird end up as an impoverished colony? Like, how does an empire of merchants capture an entire subcontinent?
Well, the British colonial playbook relied heavily on ruthless economic and political subjugation. Step 1. Exploit those internal divides we talked about, like utilizing Mir Jafar's betrayal in 1757 to seize Bengal. Step 2. Actively crush the local industries. There are infamous accounts of them actually cutting the thumbs off highly skilled Indian weavers. And Step 3. Enforce heavy taxation that literally starved farmers, while their grain was being shipped overseas.
Naturally, this kind of intense oppression sparked a massive pushback. It kicked off with the huge bloody revolt of 1857, featuring icons like Rani Lakshmi Bai. It then galvanized into this unshakable national unity after the horrific Jallianwala Bagh massacre in 1919. And from there, it evolved into massive civil disobedience, with Gandhi's Dandi March running parallel to the armed resistance organized abroad by Subhash Chandra Bose. It was absolutely a multi-front struggle. Subhash Chandra Bose's famous demand, "Give me blood, I will give you freedom," really captures the fiery, zero-compromise mood of the era. You essentially had Gandhi's nonviolent marches shaking the world's conscience on one end, while Bose's Indian National Army was physically shaking the foundations of colonial rule on the other. And that brings us to our final act, Phase 5, the rise of modern India, rebuilding a fractured nation into a global superpower.
The speed of this post-colonial recovery is just, wow, breathtaking. Almost immediately in 1947, Sardar Patel steps up and unifies 562 totally fragmented princely states into one single, cohesive nation. Fast forward to 1971, and a decisive military victory completely redraws the map of South Asia. Then you look at their space program, which literally started with scientists hauling rocket parts on the back of bicycles, and they recently landed a rover on the moon's south pole. Today, they stand as the 5th largest economy in the world and a booming digital AI hub.
It's an absolutely unbelievable journey, from stone-drilled dentistry in 9000 BC all the way to the lunar surface. So after rising from the ashes of history time and time again for 11,000 years, what impossible heights will the soul of this resilient civilization reach next? Keep questioning the history around you, and thanks so much for joining me for this explainer.